what do you think are the most common misbehaviors or poor lifestyle habits relating to the fundamentals of health?
What I see is first the personality of keep on going until the end, right? And it's to the point that I do understand I'm not 100% now, but I'm still going to try. I'm going to have more coffee. I'm going to have more, substance to switch on and more substance to switch off in the evening. But that's not self-regulating. You actually force your body into doing things that you cannot do. And it's not a right attitude for sure. And the second thing is also the mentality as a whole in a very driven environment, which is the corporate environment, let's say. It is changing, but there's still this mentality like, we are a high achiever and we're going for it.
Thomas, welcome to the Charles and Giselle show. I am so excited to have you here with us today. How are you?
Very good, thank you. I'm very excited to be here too.
Likewise. I was reflecting on meeting you in Finland across the Biohacking Summit many years ago now.
Can't remember, but 5-6 years.
Yes,
at least,
quite a while, and great to have you back in London, all the way from Mallorca.
Yes.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit more about your background, Thomas.
So my background, I started here in London as a sports scientist, and what got me into all this is a story I will share. But I was a professional swimmer, a very long time ago, so another cycle of life really, and what I quickly realized is my performance was not optimal, and I was tending to crash, and that was when I was in my 16 or so at school, and the answer I was getting is because I'm overtraining, which I was training every day 2 hours or so, and during holiday twice a day, but that was what was required, but I quickly realized that actually it was more my diet that was the reason of my crash, because being a Frenchman in France and having the boulangerie near the swimming pool, the first thing I would do is actually already had my the container of Nutella into my bag, and straight after swimming training, I was obviously starving, and I will pass through the boulangerie, the whole baguette, open the baguette and put the whole half of the pot, and that was just to sustain me for an hour before dinner, but the amount of calorie obviously I was burning was consequent. But the problem is having this massive burst of sugar, glucose, the day after was obviously putting a lot of stress on my metabolism, and I was crashing, and all I was getting was I needed to stop training. I was overtraining, and one day I realized that maybe this was the problem, and started changing my nutrition, and really felt the difference within days and weeks after that, which got me really fascinated about the whole nutritional aspect. And I'm talking about over 20 years ago, and it was the beginning really, and really the intricacity of and complexity of how nutrients can change our behavior and can change our performance. So that got me into the whole sports science and then nutrition, and obviously I'm fast forwarding very quickly here.
Of course.
Then nutrigenomics, which is obviously something I started. I was actually the first in London. I've been titled the DNA dietitian. I am no dietitian, but been titled the DNA dietitians because in 2010 I was already using DNA testing for non-disease related issue, but to really try to empower my, at the time it was athletes, my clients to have a personalized approach to their health and performance. Actually, it was performance first. And at the time it was still very, very expensive and limited. But things have moved very fast in the space. Actually, sequencing the genome from 2000 was it's several million fold of what it is the price now, and you can do the same for less than £100 now. So it's very interesting how fast things have evolved, and the science of nutrigenomics got me very interested in how, from the standpoint of what we are made of and our context, what is the dialogue with our environment, our lifestyle, that can really make a change for us to thrive, really. And that's a starting point, because the genes is not the whole story. But why I really started with gene is because it creates this relationship with your own biology. And we all very much unique, genetically speaking. And I can go in all the details, but I'm sure a lot of you have done biology before. But it's just exciting to know that we have millions of genes that are all very much different, and some of them code for something, and that we call the SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphism, and from a person to another is very different, and this will determine how you can react to certain food, how we can process certain things, how you're going to start detoxing certain substances, from your metabolism, cardiometabolic, to as I said, detoxification, to even brain health, to joint health, to all of this is determined by your genes. And understanding and having those tools, understanding what you are made of, will then empower you to start making lifestyle changes, but also implement habits that counts for you, especially if then it is complemented with other analysis, such as blood markers, biomarkers, and also symptom analysis, that then when you start connecting the dots, you have a story. And that is what is very interesting. And that got me, obviously, still is my career, and I'm loving it. And I've created a lot of things around it, as you know. And that was the starting point. Yeah.
And what have you found out about your genes that has been most significant in helping you optimize your health and performance?
Yeah, so, I mean, the first one, find out that the baguette and Nutella was really not a good idea, because I do have predisposition to type 2 diabetes. So I have all those insulin sensitivity genes that are what we call high impact. So if I have, let's say, a meal with high carbs and low protein, I will have tendency to have metabolic inflexibility and not being 100%. And obviously this is a very important thing. Detoxification pathways as well. There's certain genes like GSTM1, which has to do with how you're going to detox certain substances. And it's not just working for me. It's the same for VDR, which is vitamin D receptor. My baseline for vitamin D is a lot higher than anybody else that will not have these genes, but many people have that. So that means my requirement in vitamin D is higher. So all those things are very interesting, because I was suffering, being from north of France, also as the SAD syndrome, so, lacking of light and vitamin D. But again, I was not being told that it was related to that. It was part of the overtraining thing, right?
Of course.
So this is all the things I've learned, and that obviously change over time. So for me, there's a lot of things that I have implemented, my lifestyle, my diet, my environment to match my gene pool, really. My genetic makeup. And obviously then I know exactly what to track and what to, what changes I need to make for things to be optimal.
And is it something that you do once in a lifetime, or is it something that you recommend people to do several times?
A genetic test is one of a lifetime, because your genes won't change. What will change is the expression of them. But your genes, and this is the beauty of it, your genes are not your fate. We have been told and believed and still now, a lot of people I talk to believe that, okay, dementia running in the family, or cancer running in the family. But you may have certain genes that predispose you for those things. For example, the ApoE4 genes, which I have, is a candidate for dementia. But then if you have these genes, and yes, if you have insulin sensitivity, if you have certain deficiency in vitamins that are or minerals that are very important for your brain health, like the B vitamins, B complex, if you have hormone imbalances, all those things will express those genes. But if all those things are in check, you will not necessarily have the symptoms. It's very important to understand that your genes are not your fate. You are in charge of, your health is your responsibility, and by having access to all those tools we have now, and the understanding of how those pathways work, we can make very significant lifestyle changes, and diet and environmental changes that will make a difference, and will prevent you from contracting those diseases that takes decades to develop. And I might go in this a bit more later, but we right now unfortunately have a acute care system, which is more of a disease economy, which treat symptoms when they appear. And it's time for a new health architecture that actually look at predictive prevention, that is what we call the 4P medicine, really, which is predictive, preventative, personalised, and participatory. That is also very important. And predictive is we have amazing tool like AI and all those things now that keep evolving faster and faster. We do have the analytic to connect the dots between data, and understanding between the interconnectivity, because we are very complex ecosystem as a human being, but understanding the interconnectivity between your symptoms, your genetic, your environment, your context, right? Your biomarkers, if you do a blood test, and other tests like functional testing, hormones and gut microbiome. So having what we call a multi-omic approach is very powerful, and we now have the tools to connect the dots to understand where you are based on what your predispositions are. So what are the risks for you? And that's predictive. And then the prevention is actually based on what we have learned. What are the protocols? What are the things we can do to minimize or to cut those to catch those risks at an earlier stage, before they become a problem, before they become a disease, right? And again, those things we know how to do. And again, when it's personalized based on your context, you then can have a lot more effective protocols, and you can have strategies that are efficient, right? So it's not a generic approach. And finally, the whole participatory aspect of thing is you are at the center of your health. This is your health. And I like to say, and I repeat this often, your health is your responsibility. You shouldn't have, obviously you need the health guidance. You need the guidance of practitioners, qualified practitioners. It's very important, especially nowadays, but you also need to do the work yourself in implementing the things. And it's a journey, it's an ongoing thing. And because we're so complex, there's no magic molecule, there's no magic supplements that will fix the whole thing. So it's really looking at things, and coming back at the preventive and analytic model of things. What is your top priority for you based on all the data we have, and what can you do with this top priority, and what is the second one, and what is the third one? And often you will realize that once you pass the third top priority of fixing your health, your biology, which is very resilient, will automatically fix the rest. And it's because this is how we're wired to thrive. And it's very interesting to see that, over and over again, that people who fix their main issues the rest just fall back into place. And we tend to then keep this as most people become ambassador once they have renewed their health, and they, and they start communicating this with their loved ones and friends, and it's very interesting to see.
What are some trends that you have noticed amongst some of your clients that may be most prone to anxiety, chronic stress, burnout? Is there any sort of archetype or profiles in terms of genes or DNA that could predispose one to fall into those categories?
There is a lot of genes that have an impact on several things. So brain health, let's look at neurotransmitters. There are certain genes like the COMT genes has to do with how you're going to process those neurotransmitters like dopamine, epinephrine, all those different things. And some have, like myself again, that's also a good reason why I'm doing all this. I have all the bad genes.
I'm sure that can't be true, Thomas.
No, I've learned to express them very well, but it's different things. But the COMT genes, for example, is a very important one, FKBP5, which is to do with your cortisol response, so your stress hormone response, right? Then there's BDNF, again, all those genes, but it's also the not looking at things in isolation, is all those genes together, they does accumulate, right? That's one thing, and the genetic part, right? Then obviously in terms of the archetype is, if you are very driven, a type A personality.
I don't know any.
Yeah, which I'm pretty sure is 95% or more of the people who are going to listen to your podcast. We have the tendency to, not stop. So it's also understanding that you do have your predisposition, but knowing your characteristic, I would say, your mentality and how you do things. What can I do to prevent burnout in terms of recovery? What can I actually block some time just for that? And there's many ways based on what it's coming from, whether it's emotional stress, whether it's just exhaustion of too long hours, whether it's an imbalanced diet because we don't have time to pay attention to the diet, and therefore not getting the right nutrients that obviously change the brain chemistry of or those, doesn't help those genes to work properly. Where the source of those problems are coming from. Once we understand, we have this more holistic approach and more integrative approach of understanding where the problems might be, then we can address and have a protocol that is efficient to address this burnout. Because again, it can be very different from a person to another. It can be in a habit that we have at the last 2 hours before going to bed. We're going to do emails on the phone in the blue light, and then we will never get enough deep sleep because it's already 1 a.m. and we wake up at 6 in the morning, and then straight away go into the gym to lift some weight and go to this very intensive class because we are doer. But actually that's not what you need now, because your cortisol is already very high, and it's you need a break. You need more something that is actually going to help you self-regulate the HPA axis, which is the sort of parasympathetic system and all the your stress really, and help. And then this intervention, you can take supplementation, but supplements, as the name says, it is a supplement. It's not the fundamental. So the fundamental first is taking the time to assess what do you do on your daily basis, what are the habits that will contribute to, make things worse, and what the habits you can, exchange with us to actually make things better, right? And it's very personalized. It's a very personal approach. Myself, having been a CEO of a company for 5 years and starting Omnos from scratch, it was very challenging, and COVID happened and all those things. I did go through burnout, and I myself, decided, okay, this time, the first 2 hours, it's me, it's my time, and I will dedicate to have the strategy to put in place to change the things, and then obviously things have changed. So yeah.
What are some of the markers that you found out and that help you change some of the lifestyle decision that you have made in your life? Because I know that you've recently moved to Mallorca.
Yes.
You now live in the sun, so
Yes.
quite a different lifestyle, right?
Very different
from
lifestyle.
living in London back when you were burning out.
Yeah.
Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about what you found out about your genes that have made you make those holistic lifestyle design decisions?
Yeah. So it's a combination of genes. It's a combination of also the symptoms, and the environment. Are always been very hyper, and that's my generation. There's all those generation, and again, it's something to do with genetics, and it shows the disconnection we have with our environment doesn't have an impact on our genetic, and the epigenetic is what gets passed on from generation to generation. And that is something very, it's a whole different conversation, but that is very much important to understand, because there's a very fundamental aspect of all the disease we are seeing nowadays, or dysregulation, like fertility, even gender dysregulation. Those things were non-existent before. This shows that our genetic is being impacted over generation through our lifestyle. So anyway, I'm going a bit far there, but what I'm saying here is, I've realized that because I'm very much hyper, I need this regulation. And the regulation I get is in a natural environment. You put me in water, in the ocean, or in the sea, or in among trees. I naturally have the self-talk, the anxiety of doing things calming down. And for me, something that I've noticed has a massive impact. Being a ex-swimmer, professionally, I've always been inclined to diving. I do free diving now. I can see through my trackers, like the Whoop or this sort of thing. It's just crazy to see how my body reacts when I free dive. That my HRV, so heart rate variability, which is a marker of recovery, jumps by 30% each time, which is incredible. But because that's, for me, it's very important. It's very individual. But for everybody, the disconnection with your natural environment will already create disconnection of how you're going to function. And burnout has a lot to do with this, because it's a succession of little things like this, that your body gets to a state where you cannot self-regulate.
Yes.
And you don't even have time you don't even allow to give the time to your body to do so. And obviously then it gets worse and worse. And however it expresses, the long term of this burnout can be, autoimmune disease and all sort of things. So yeah, that's very interesting to see that my journey has been from identifying the most important things to get a reset of, and then that's the fundamentals. And I like to start with the fundamentals first, and then optimizing, right? But you need to get the fundamental right, because you're not in the right mindset if you don't have the fundamental in place, and you're just patching things over, right? And that doesn't work for the long term.
What do you think are the most common misbehaviors or poor lifestyle habits relating to the fundamentals of health?
So in what sense? In the front?
Amongst high achievers that may be going down the path of burnout, what do you see as common patterns in your clients?
Common pattern, is the resilience, or the first. It's actually what I see is first the personality of keep on going until the end, right? And it's to the point that I do understand I'm not 100% now, but I'm still going to try. I'm going to have more coffee. I'm going to have more, substance to switch on and more substance to switch off in the evening. But that's not self-regulating. It is, you actually force your body into doing things that you cannot do. And it's not a right attitude for sure. There's this first thing. And the second thing is also the mentality as a whole, in a very driven environment, which is the corporate environment, let's say. It is changing, but and you're contributing to this thing, so well done on this, because it's very important. But there's still this mentality, like, we are high achiever and we're going for it. And
we go.
And most of my clients, it's funny to see they are in this state, but they're still going on cycling holiday, doing miles and miles and no rest in between, and flying from a place to another. And, it's... So the mentality is also very important, but being influenced. So what I think also is very important is what impact is obviously the diet that goes with it. And not taking the time for the recovery.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you talked about those habits for switching on and switching off. Coffee and alcohol. And I know that through genes testing, you can find out a lot of information about your caffeine tolerance and alcohol. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Because I think those are very common habits.
There's a SNP, a gene called CYP12, which will tell you about your caffeine metabolism. So how you're going to process caffeine. And this, you can be either... have one coffee, and many people will it's obvious when you have that, and you will be having the jittery and everything. And then you have other people who can have many coffees and they still have a good night's sleep, even if the coffee is late in the evening, during the day. So that has to do with how you metabolize coffee. And then again, these genes, like I mentioned earlier, the COM genes, has to do with anxiety. Caffeine will not detox properly if you have this gene as a high variant, and actually you're going to feel anxiety, which is my case. So I can process caffeine very well, but over 200 milligrams or so, let's say free coffee, I can feel anxious, right? So, and the anxiety is purely biological. It's just my neurotransmitters not being detoxed properly, and it's a bit too much, and I feel anxious. Did
you know this before you got your genes tested, or did you have?
I had the effect, yes, but I didn't know it was. When I see in black and white, it's like, that's the thing about a genetic test. You have 200 reasons to have a haha moment when you look at your SNPs. So, which is very interesting. I had many injuries, and because all my collagens and all my joints, genes are not optimal. And now I pay attention because I was also training very hard, and I was, also inflammation genes and lifting weight like crazy all the time. And, I played rugby, I, did all those different things. And I had so many injuries, but I was never giving the time for mobility, for joint strengthening, for conditioning, really. Even as a sports scientist, right? So, I knew about all those things, but I wasn't doing it for myself. And I paid the price. And I still pay the price now that, I had so many torsions and fractures and things that could have been avoided
if you knew.
At the time. Yeah, if I knew. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You've covered the topic of coffee, and what about alcohol?
Same. There's many genes on how you process alcohol. Obviously, alcohol anyway will have an impact on your biology, and it's not a good one. There's thousands and thousands of studies. Even a glass of red wine and then, can have a negative impact. Obviously, alcohol is a social thing as well. So, and I want to touch on this maybe a bit later about the importance of community and the importance of bonding with our it's very important for for overall health. But alcohol will have an impact, especially on how you're going to regulate your hormones, and so stress, right? So it's, especially if you're burnout, alcohol will definitely have a negative impact. So you think you switching off, sort of speak, by but what you're doing is actually adding more burden for your body to regulate, impairing your sleep. So you will never have a good sleep if you're going to bed and you have drinks before going to bed, because your body's ability necessity to remove all those toxins will work a lot. And you can just take your heart rate during the night. If you sleep with having several drinks before, and if you don't have alcohol, the difference is massive, and your body will not go on deep sleep. You will obviously wake up with a hangover, and again we start again, caffeine, more caffeine, and so yeah.
And from a genetic standpoint, can you make informed decision around the way you drink and the quantity you drink? Can you get some data that actually helps you understand how to change some behavior?
Yeah, you can, definitely, because your detoxification pathways as well, so how you process alcohol, will help you. But again, to come back on excessive alcohol consumption, there's no way around it. It will have a negative impact, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if it's the consistency of it will have a negative impact.
Can we talk about sleep?
Yeah.
And genes around it. A lot of my clients suffer from insomnia, chronic anxiety, struggling to fall asleep or stay asleep. How could finding out about their genes be a powerful way to make holistic lifestyle changes to optimize their sleep?
Yeah. So sleep, first, a lot of sleep is good. The more the better. Not excessive, but 7-8 hours. And I know this sounds a lot to achieve when you're very busy. But that is the optimal range. But then certain genes, like the clock genes, other genes will have actually an impact whether you are an early bird or a night owl. So that is also conditioned by your genes.
Are you referring to the chronotypes here?
Yeah. So this is definitely something that has its foundation in genetic, on your genetic makeup. And then is also how things like melatonin and production. So all this as well is very individual from a person to another. And again, sometimes melatonin, for example, can be quite helpful to restore one's pathways if it's needed. But for this, hormone testing is also very good. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do once you have the data to pinpoint of, okay, you're this genotype, and your hormone test shows that, your waking cortisol is not there, and melatonin is lacking. So there's a lot of things you can do as a precise protocol, but this is more advised to do with a practitioner, right? Because with a practitioner, you can actually have very targeted protocols and can track and sort of regulate things again and rectify some pathways, and then retest and say, yes, we've done this work and this is why you sleep better now. And again, it's very individualized. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So earlier on today, you said something that I found really interesting and perhaps is worth explaining a bit more for our listener. You said, and I quote, "I have bad genes, but I've learned about gene expression," mm-hmm. right? And I've altered behavior. Can you tell us a bit what that means for someone that's not familiar with gene expression, so that we really understand that concept a bit more?
First, it's actually not the right thing to say the bad genes, or, if there's no such things as bad genes, but you can have an expression that's going to you disservice. But you're in charge of your, again, changing or adapting for those genes to express better, right? Some genes like VDR, which I mentioned, vitamin D, I know that my baseline in winter, I do need to supplement in, even in Mallorca, I do need to supplements to be in my optimal range that I want to be. And when I say optimal range, I think I need to explain this, is the standard ranges is, if you're very low in vitamin D, standard range, let's say 25, that's very low. And your doctor might point out at it, but will not necessarily do anything about it. But the optimal range is like, let's say 75 plus, that's optimal range, because a lot of body function will not function optimally between the 25 and 75 range, especially within your context. If you, let's say, have hormone issue, if you are in this certain age where, breast cancer is a high risk and all these things, vitamin D is very important, right? So this is to understand my baseline is different than yours because of these genes. So I know in winter I do need to supplement, and in summer I try to be, in not peak hours of the sun, of course, but I like to train, for example, and having as much as sun exposure on my body as possible in the morning, and that's something I do every day. That works until the winter comes and the UV index is not as high, and I then need to supplement to be back in my optimal range. So I track and I see this. Going away from vitamins and minerals, or there's a lot I can talk to as well, like B12, B9, which are very important for me because, as I said, I'm quite hyper, and those things are very important for brain health and regulation of all those neurotransmitters. But then certain genes like the DRD4 genes, which has to do with dopamine receptors, that makes me, novelty seeker. And so those things is things that I had to channel as well, because I don't want to have the lifestyle of, always getting agitated with the new, and so mindfulness.
But you're prone to that.
I'm prone to that. So mindfulness is also very important. So having done the work on myself to meditation, understanding my body reaction, but create the space in between to then actually make the right choice is also very important. Things you cannot do when you burn out because you don't have the time for this, you don't have the space for this. Your body just reacts. That's also very important to understand. You do not have the resilience anymore, or the brain capacity to make right decision, which is a bit, obviously contradictory, especially if you're a high, an executive, or so that's also very important.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any general success stories of executives, perhaps, that have learned a lot about their genes and been able to translate that into business success?
Yes.
Yeah? Could you share?
Just yesterday, had a coffee with an old client of mine, and the whole change first came to me, burnout, overweight, high blood pressure, been given the warning from his GP that it could happen at any time, heart conditions, or so decided to take risk. Things, serious risks. And obviously all the markers, we've done blood tests, and all the markers were outside, the ranges. And it has been a long journey for him, but I'm going to obviously cut the details, but there was other things. But now seeing, meeting for coffee as friends 10 years later, 45 kilo less, with a biological age younger than his physical age, by 10 years. He's 55, his biological age. I can explain what is a biological age.
That would be great, yes.
So, but his biological age is 45. So biological age is well, very simply, we have a chronological age and doctors should really start looking at biological age instead, which is how your body performs, right? I mean, very simply, right? But the more data you feed to this biological age, the more precision you have of how your body functions. And it is real science. There's real science more and more in biological age, and is becoming a standard in functional medicine, integrative medicine as a marker. And it's a lot of things you can do in a day to make your biological age go down. So, for example, this person, one of these things that decided to do is yoga. Started yoga. He's always doing, for sure, his 10,000 steps a day. The nutrition completely changed, and all those things add up during the day. And as a result, his biological age is 10 years younger. His biology is 10 years younger than his chronological age. But the good thing about doing that is we know that the disease we are dying of are age-related diseases. But you can very quickly increase your biological age by decades within a year if you have a very wrong lifestyle. And actually burning out and being in a constant chronic inflammation state, having oxidative stress for your body and all those different things which are byproduct of it, make you age very quickly. So you will gain 5 years in a year time, right? So, but you can do the opposite. And this is what is very exciting. And, people will probably know about Brian Johnson, with his biological age. But you don't have to spend that much money and follow crazy protocol if it's personalized.
Mm-hmm. So would it be fair to say that if I am Kurt, 45-year-old, burning out professional, I have a high chance of having a biological age that is higher than my chronological age?
Yes. Yeah, I don't do betting, but I could bet on that, yeah.
You could bet on that?
Yeah, definitely.
You'll be happy to bet.
I don't do betting because of my DRD4 genes, No, but yes, it is definitely, yeah, for sure.
That is fascinating. And that is something that is very tangible, right?
Yeah.
People can see on paper. They actually have this information.
It is a test. There's a test that I do with patients called a true age test or glycon age test, or, they look at biological age.
And do you find that people have a bit of a ha-ha moment when they see this black and white? Because there is a lot of resistance, right?
Yeah.
Very often...
It can be a shock sometimes.
Right.
Feel very older. So it's very important for these things to be done. Well, they're not accessible anyway. It should be done via a practitioner.
Of course.
But it's very important to because it's very important to understand that this is reversible. And again, it's exciting to know that it is reversible, and to know that you can chronologically become older, but biologically become younger. And that is very powerful. And now, with all the exciting, analytical things we have, and AI and machine learning, we really start to understand what are the pathways that are very efficient based on someone's, individuality that can reduce that age.
Mm-hmm. So if someone, Kurt, wanted to do a test today to test these markers and his biological age, and then decided to work with a practitioner, with a coach, with a sports scientist, or with someone like you to make holistic changes, how long after Kurt starts his journey of health optimization and behavior shift should he take that test again to see if it's biological?
It's a very personalized question, so in the sense of where this person is, what is the context, what is the age difference and as indication, and what is the work that needs to be done to reverse the condition in this age.
So when you say what's the difference in the age, so the wider the gap between your chronological age and your biological age.
But sometimes, all those inflammation, chronic inflammation, there's certain things like having leaky guts, which is a condition you have. So a gut microbiome will tell you that. But basically, your gut blood barrier is broken, let's say, and you tend to have all the things that should be going out of your body into your bloodstream, and then gets your immune system overactive, and can go into chronic inflammation and obviously autoimmune diseases. Those conditions, which are very common among the corporate world, after years of just diet not being on point and burnout, and this is typical conditions.
Of course.
This will accelerate drastically your biological age. But those things, again, are I wouldn't say easily. It depends where you are, but they are reversible. And sometimes it can be because of some parasites that you need to eliminate, and you don't know you had this parasite for years.
But then you find out.
And then you find out through a microbiome test. And actually for this parasite, okay, oregano oil will not do the job. You do need antibiotics, but that's fine. We remove this parasite, but then let's do the work of rebuilding from there. And if your gut are not working optimally, we know already you probably will have some gastric inflammation. You're not going to absorb the nutrient. You can eat all the most amazing, nutritious foods, but if your guts are not working to break it down and to assimilate those nutrients properly, it's just not going to get into you. So it's repairing all those processes one by one, and once you have done this job and you can feel the symptoms are going off, let's do another age, as an indication, a biological age, and I'm back now below my chronological age.
Then you know.
Yeah, then you know.
Okay.
Yeah, but before that, I would first look at biomarkers, right? So I'm not optimal in vitamin D, in B12, my testosterone are low, all those different things. Let's fix all these things first. And then with optimal range, it's common sense. You don't even have to retest, really. If you want to retest and know what is it, you can. But if those things are being back to normal, you are doing better.
Most likely to have a biological age that is lower than your chronological age. Okay. And is that what you call becoming a health architect? Because that's incredibly empowering and powerful. You effectively become the person in charge of your health. You can change even your biological age, which I think is remarkable. Is that what you mean by becoming a health architect?
The health architect is about taking ownership of your health. And there's two things. The health architect is you, the architect, but we also need to change all architecture that facilitate this. And unfortunately, it's not the way it is now. I can talk about this subject, but I'm a bit passionate about it. But I like to say that we need to have a 3D approach. I've wrote a book 3 years ago, which is still on my shelves. I haven't done anything with it. But I have this 3D approach of it needs to be democratized in the sense that, and let me explain from the start, that we have an amazing system in place. I'm not about criticizing amazing doctors that do a very hard work to save people's life. But the system is an acute care system. It's a reactive care system.
Of course.
It is about treating disease, and it's a disease economy system.
Post-diagnosis.
Post-diagnosis, exactly. And we now need a new health architecture, which needs to be this 3D approach, which is democratized, where the complexity of medicine needs to be made simple for us to be engaged. Decentralized in a sense that you should be able to, just like we have done with Omnos, to have access to certain tests at home and have the results and being recommended what to do by order of priority on how to optimize your health, to be then proactive. And if something is clinical, yes, you need to do that with the guidance of a health practitioner. But if it's about wellness, you need to do that yourself. And if you still want to do it with a health guide or life coach, you can, and I recommend that too. But it also needs to be about data ownership, in a sense that, unfortunately, one of the main reasons why people cannot do that nowadays, because you're going to do all those tests and everything through an ecosystem as in a hospital. And if everything is normal, in a sense that you are not dying or you're not in a danger of declining and you don't need clinical care, we're not going to share the data with you. And all is kept silo, defragmented. And it's a very linear approach. So yeah, those things needs to change. And then again, is to come back to the 4P medicine of having something that actually, if you own those data, can I put it in some analytics, like an algorithm? We live in an amazing time where we can use artificial intelligence, machine learning to reach network of information that we cannot ourselves because it's too much and we're very complex. And then connect the dots between everything to tell us, okay, what are then the things I need to do to prevent? So I told you about my ApoE genes, which has to do with Alzheimer, for example. I did have a few concussions in my life, being an active in different sports, even martial arts, and rugby. Those two components, that's not good news. But because I know about this, because I know that dementia has been in my family, because I know what are the vitamins and minerals I need to have optimal brain health, because I know this, because I know that hormonal health is very important for it. I make sure all of those things are optimal, and also take time to do brain games and things that, neuroplasticity, because that's also very important for later. So those are things that I've implemented in many habits. And that's what I mean by architecture, is to have a whole system that can guide people to make the changes that count based on what is matters for them, based on what the prevention is, the prediction is, and then test, track, and see where we are, and what can we do more to prevent things to happen. And there is a lot of studies, dementia, most things like Alzheimer. There's a lot of studies. There's Brainston, is a brilliant PhD. The End of Alzheimer is his book. Protocol that works with people in reversing early onset Alzheimer. So there is, and we now understand more and more how those things work. So, yeah.
So, in your expert opinion, where do you see the future of health going?
It needs to be based on the 4P medicine, and we need. When I'm talking about the acute care system, it should always be there because we need it. If I get hit by a car here, amazing doctors will, save my life, and we very grateful. In the case of, pandemic again, we can have doctors being helpful and saving lives. But when it comes to prevention, we need a whole new system as efficient as the acute care system in place. First, because if we don't do that, we have problem of huge magnitude that is coming. That is the fact that it will cost trillions of dollars, and it already does. Every country is overwhelmed by, the disease, the pandemic of chronic illness, and the social security and all those things are being impacted, and the country itself is being impacted. And I think it was $47 trillion by 2030 if we don't do anything. That's numbers, that it's huge numbers. And that's the first thing. So that's the economical aspect of things. But the future of health, I'm an optimistic, and I think with all the things we have now, the technology like AI, machine learning, we can create an architecture that is based on this 4P medicine, that is cloud-based, that is collaborative between research institute for predictive prevention. But there's a lot of initiatives, but unfortunately not to the level that needs to be to address the big, wall of brick that is in front of us. We really need to speed up initiatives, and there's a lot, the 100 Genome Project, all those different things. They're great, but we need more. We need more, and I like to think that change comes from us as individual, and if individually, personally, we make the changes that count towards a more proactive health and taking those initiatives, things will change. Legislation will change, and more will be developed to create this new architecture. That needs to be done in the next 5 years. And if this is done, I would see in the next 10 years, we are being just monitored, and we have real-time intervention. And I'm working on this, having, with an amazing team, developed an algorithm that connect the dots between everything and help from the lab to practitioner to create a seamless integration of all this to help giving personalized recommendation that help towards this way. But I think there's still the work to do in between the practitioner to the us, the end user, the patient, to have an extra hand of guidance, of helping people implementing in real time effective preventative measure that are very personalized. So let's say I wake up in the morning, and let's say in 10 years time, and we have amazing devices in our bathroom that takes all those data and put this in the algorithm, and straight away we know already that we are low in this and we are dehydrated, and your smart IoT kitchen is making you an electrolyte drink with top up of vitamin D and all this. This is what should become the future of health, is real-time health optimization. We can do it, but it needs to be, the reason why it's not moving fast enough now, I think, is because there's still a very dogmatic approach of the acute care system that this is how we do things and it's not going to change. But this system is now overwhelmed, and it needs to work in collaboration with a preventative care system that can together have actually a network system of, we prevent you, and if things are clinical from this person as tested, then yes, go into the acute care system because that's what you need. But before that can be a functional doctor or a nutritionist or even a health guide. Someone will help you to be more proactive on a daily basis towards your health.
What is one thing you would like to leave our listener with as an action plan to be more proactive about their health after listening to you?
First is to block the time for it, because otherwise it's just another information, and is the action part, because People listen to this now. It's a lot of information, and we do that all day long, listening to information. The action and the implementation, what matter. So my one takeaway is find out what makes you unique through a genetic test or and let's have a look at your context, where you are now. You are A. What is Z? Where do you want to be? And what are the first little steps to actually, go towards a better version of yourself, as an optimized version of yourself, in a sense of, being healthier and so. But that is my takeaway. What are the first steps that I can implement today? To make those changes that count. And let's just start there, because we shouldn't leave, 30 days for now, but today, what matters. And then you start creating habits. And that is a lot more powerful than doing something, have all the information and buying all the supplements and do everything. And then 2 weeks down the line, the old habits come back because you haven't rewired your brain to do the things. So taking things as a journey is also something I'd like to say. Another thing I'd love to say, which is very important, if you allow me, because we talk about all those data, all those, which is what I do. But very important, the human connection, the connection with our natural environment. Those are fundamentals and basics. Sunlight, meaningful relationship, those are pillars, and sleep, and, can go on nutrition and all those things. But we tend to forget to the most fundamental things, that we are an ecosystem ourselves, and we live in another ecosystem. And all the problem we have nowadays is because of this disconnection of ourselves as individual, becoming more and more isolated as individuals, but also disconnected from our ecosystem. And when you look at the timeline of things, from the 80s, obesity, then autism, allergies, rise of cancer, rise of fertility, all those things are signs that we are living in an alienated world in comparison to our biology, our genetic, and this is why we see those things happen. It's just a coping, a coping sort of system that our biology is trying to say we're going on the wrong path. And I think it's very important, because we can talk about what, pinpoints what to do, but as a whole, we also need to have this collaborative sort of thinking of how to fix the big problem, to be more human, having human experiences, right? So the campfire is not a bad thing,
Looking at the moonlight, looking at the sky.
And the reason I moved to Mallorca is to do more of those things. And I do track my health. I take supplements. I do, but the pillar is this: is to reconnect, and to be able to do that has made a massive difference. Regressing even in the burnout I had that made me some patch of gray hair. Regressing this, so it's very interesting to see. We're just now in a very accelerated path of things not working properly, and we need to change this and start with the fundamentals.
Thank you, Thomas. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure listeners have too. And I'll make sure that they can connect to you and start their journey to become health architects with you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Charlene.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for spending your time with me today and listening to this episode. Remember to subscribe so that you can receive weekly updates. And if today's message resonated with you, please remember to share it with a friend, a colleague, or a loved one who could really benefit from this episode.